if what you said is true, Mark Withers and the NerdCage could be dangerous. Hello and welcome. That's right, you're trapped in NerdCage Live. This ain't just a reaction show, but a debate show and a live discussion on everything that makes people like you and I tick. So thank you for joining us tonight. Please hit that like button and subscribe. I'm your co-host, Jay St. G, coming to you live from Syracuse, New York. And always with me, the warrior from Wakanda, the Fiend from Louisville, my man, Mark Withers. Introduce this Justice League we have of our own tonight.
Absolutely. What's up, guys? Super excited to be here as usual. And yes, today we are going to be talking about the Zack Snyder Justice League that was released this weekend on HBO Max. I hope everybody got a chance to watch it and enjoy it as we did. And we're lucky tonight to unite our own league here, unite our own four, starting off with Davis Mandol, also known as the mighty Titangoji. How are you, sir?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to sharing my thoughts on this movie.
Awesome. And also with us here is Pete Mason from NewYorkStateMusic.com. Pete, how are you today?
Glad to be here. Glad to have finally watched the full cut and excited to talk about it. There's a lot to unpack.
Absolutely. We're talking about a 4-hour movie here. There is a whole lot to discuss, so let's just go ahead and dig right in, starting with how we all felt about this movie. Now, Jay, I know you've been waiting a long time to kind of dig into this one, kind of talk about it. What are your thoughts about this?
First and foremost, after years of Joss Whedon this, Ray Fisher that, does the movie exist, does it not, when is it coming out? We see a banner fly above Times Square, release the Snyder Cut. Everybody is bitching at the conventions. Where's the Snyder Cut? The pressure on WB and everything else. A year ago, we get the announcement. We get DC Fandom. And then here we are on HBO Max at Thursday, 3 in the morning. I actually did watch it straight through without blinking, just like in Clockwork Orange. And I endured the whole thing. And I loved every moment of it. Yes, this is by far Zack Snyder's best work. And it lived up to the hype.
Absolutely. Davis, what are your thoughts on it?
I'll go ahead and say that the theatrical version of Justice League is probably like the worst superhero movie I've ever seen in the sense that it was very disjointed, and it's like the more you watch it, the more you notice everything that's wrong with it. It just gets worse and worse with every viewing somehow. And it's like watching Zack Snyder's Justice League at last. It was like a huge breath of fresh air, and it's astonishing that this was able to happen in the first place. The fact that this was able to happen at last is totally unprecedented, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. Because, like, how many directors can say their original vision had so much fan demand to finally be fully realized?
Right.
And of course, without comparing it to what is known as Justice League, I felt like it was a very solid film on its own, and it was worth the 4 hours.
Right on. Pete, what do you have to say about it?
I really did feel that the first one just kept missing. There was like important parts that were missing, including the whole Cyborg backstory, any depth there. There was just a lot, and I'm with you, Davis. Like every time you watch it, you're like, this just feels wrong. Like it just felt disjointed. Like part of it was trimmed just to meet some art, whatever the runtime was on the original. And now that there's a 4-hour cut, normally when you hear director's cut, you're like, okay, this is for the super fans, but this is for everybody who saw Justice League and said, wait, there's more. There has to be more. And it was so thorough, and it was just well laid out. First viewing, I got through the first 2 parts, and the second viewing, I got through 5 parts, and then picked it up. And I liked how it was broken down into sections, so it wasn't this monumental beast that you had to tackle over the course of it and wonder where you were stopping. You could pause after a part and like, okay, what's going on here? And there was small stuff, but there was also some really critical things that what was Joss thinking? And thank you, Snyder, for bringing this together.
Absolutely. I agree with everything that you said. Now, as far as my thoughts on the movie, I'm of 2 minds. On the one hand, this is light years ahead of anything that Joss Whedon gave us. With,
or you could say leagues above the original version.
Well said, sir. But yeah, this is a much better movie than we got in 2017. For once, it actually felt like the Justice League. If you're a fan of the comics or even a fan of the animated series that was on Cartoon Network. This gave you that same feel of an origin story of putting together a team like that. And especially with having it broken down into 6 parts, it really gives you the vibe of a graphic novel where one part will focus on 1 or 2 members of that league. And maybe it's their origin, or maybe it's their backstory outside of what's going on in the main plot. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. On the other hand, just like what I said in my written review, for better or for worse, this is a Zack Snyder film. So if you're a fan of Zack Snyder overall, naturally you're going to love everything that he did here. It's remarkable what he achieved. If you are not a fan of Zack Snyder, all the things that you don't like about Zack Snyder films are still present here. There are issues with the pacing. There are a few moments that seem a little superfluous, a little self-indulgent. Some of the scoring didn't quite match what was happening in the film. There were little things like that that weren't necessarily deal breakers, but they were things that made the film a little problematic for me. And so for those things, I couldn't give it a perfect score, but overall, I did enjoy it quite a bit.
That's fair. I just want to point something out. Peter touched on it a little bit. Mark, I want you to double down on it. So Pete mentioned just a second ago, like, what was going on? Why was this movie rushed and this, and that? Mark, can you just elaborate? Wasn't there a deadline that Warner Brothers was supposed to hit, which is why we got the jumbled mess that we did?
Yes. So when this film was in production originally, the merger between Warner Brothers and AT&T was ongoing. And the CEO of Warner Brothers, Ken Sugihara, wanted to add value to this merger. And he wanted to be able to say, hey, we have this hit movie, Justice League, that will actually provide more value to the sale of Warner Brothers. And so he did everything that he could to sort of push this movie forward against all of its challenges, including Zack Snyder losing his daughter. Under normal circumstances with a director, particularly if they have a tragedy of that magnitude, the production shuts down and you wait for that director to come back. But in this case, they were already kind of unhappy with the story that he was coming up with. There were sort of political, like behind the scenes issues between Snyder and a few of the executives at Warner Brothers. And so they were kind of using that as an opportunity to kind of get rid of him and bring somebody else in order to sort of move the project forward, which we all know at this point, huge mistake.
It's honestly a pretty scummy thing to do, honestly.
Yeah, and Davis, you mentioned, like, the more you watch it, the worse it gets. I want to point out, too, not that the movie itself is just bad upon a rewatch, but what you guys all just kind of, like, touched on. All the behind-the-scenes stuff is so goddamn messed up with the accusations and stuff like that of Joss Whedon and his character and this, and that. It makes me hate the movie even more. So, like, that version of that movie is dead. And now I can watch this movie with a smile on my face because this is what it was supposed to be. And we all know that Zack Snyder is not anything like that monster Joss Whedon, that he, put this movie together, and how the cast feels about him, how everybody else feels about Zack Snyder. That makes this movie much more valuable because Zack Snyder is a genuine person.
Oh, totally.
I've never seen a cast in support of looking for more footage or another cut of a film. That it's kind of unheard of, where actors will speak up against a director or the production because that's that can get you blackballed, or people are going to remember you for that. This is a different thing where all of a sudden Jason Momoa and then Gal Gadot, and they all were like just slowly saying, yeah, there's more and you should probably see it all. And now that we've seen it, I mean, this is a first where actors were a good chunk of the reason, fans as well. Right. You can't just do this with fans encouraging this, but when the actors spoke up, you knew that there was a little bit of a shift towards, okay, this might happen. And that was maybe 2 years ago, and now we have it.
Right. And, also the technology itself, right? Like the nature of the way that we view movies now has sort of shifted, whether that's temporarily or permanently. But as Deborah Snyder pointed out, we wouldn't be able to enjoy the Snyder Cut without the advent of HBO Max. Just having that all of a sudden as an avenue, as a way to kind of put this out, because both Deborah and Zack Snyder knew that there was no chance of a theatrical release of the version that they wanted. But you could put something like that out on a streaming service, whether that's as a series or as a long form film, the way that we got. And so that creation of that streaming service, the importance of it can't really be understated in the success of this thing.
Excellent. All right, so I'm ready to get right into the movie now. So let's just start off with the beginning. Again, I just want to point out the attention to detail and storytelling stands out so much throughout the film. Even right at the beginning. So right after we get that flashback of bells been rung, Superman screaming, all the mother boxes start waking up. When we get to Aquaman's introduction where Bruce Wayne's trying to recruit him per se, I remember one of the things that everybody bitched about in the Whedon cut was Bruce Wayne's a millionaire. Why didn't he just fly a helicopter into that town and talk to Aquaman? They explained that.
Right.
They said, the people of the village just said, how did this man climb over the mountain when all the storms killed the planes, killed the helicopters? How did this man make it to our village?
Right.
Like, they explained that. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
There we go.
I agree. And particularly that scene I love because that was part of the Comic-Con preview that we got, right? In 2015 or 2016, where we got that first Comic-Con.
I believe.
Yeah. Like there was important dialogue in there that appeared in the trailer that didn't appear in the 2017 cut of the film. And at the time that I watched that theatrical cut, that was one of the things that really bothered me. Like there was a really cool scene here that we totally missed out on. And it was nice for us to kind of get that, I think. You know what I mean? And like you said, that along with a few other things spread throughout the film really helped to fill in some of these important gaps that we're missing.
I absolutely loved that scene. And going back to the theatrical version, one thing that doomed the original version of this film were the extensive reshoots that took place. Lots of inconsistencies when it came to like certain scenes. Like It's like when you watch that version, take a good close look at the reshoots, Aquaman's tattoos like switch between shots.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
I never noticed that.
Ben Affleck's hairline too.
Yeah, like Ben Affleck's hairline.
Yeah, I knew the hairline.
Yeah, and in the reshoots for Justice League, Ben Affleck is a lot more like bloated. He was much chunkier than he was before. And again, like all the stuff that happened in Justice League was just and finally seeing this moment, like the way it was meant to be seen, I got completely hooked. I thought the dialogue was really good, and just the way they establish Aquaman as a character in this movie was also brilliant.
Yeah. Pete, what do you got on that Aquaman scene?
I thought it was great. They explained how he got there. I mean, you just assume helicopter or something with Bruce Wayne, but this time we actually get to see him arrive. The only criticism I really have of the film in general is that I still can't take Ben Affleck as Batman. I don't buy it.
Really?
What?
Oh, he's my favorite part of it.
It's he's a great detective, but when he puts the mask, when he puts the suit on, it's like I'm just so used to Bale and Keaton and whoever comes next. It's a hard sell because I've been watching Affleck as everybody else my whole life, and now it's weird he doesn't fit in there. But I love the scene, how it expanded out. I love watching. I watched it a couple times because I wanted to know. First of all, I wanted to know where they were. It sounded like they were speaking Russian, but the song at the end of that scene killed me. I was like, what is this? So when we watched the whole credits, hoping for a second scene, turns out it's written by a Icelandic composer, and it seems to be specific for the movie, and it translates as water transmitter rose indicators. So if you switch it around, it's probably rose water indicators. I don't know if that has anything to do with Aquaman, but they sing to him or sing him on his way is what I got out of it. So if there's any Aquaman lore, that probably played into it. But it just seemed, wow, this wasn't in the first movie. Why are they singing this dark, creepy song? And there's something behind it. So thank you, Google Translate, for being reliable on translating Icelandic.
He's doing his homework.
Again, like attention to detail. Like,
yes. Yes. It's I know this is a Marvel thing, but at the end of Winter Soldier, the first song after or maybe it was at the end of Civil War, there's a song by Alt J called Left Hand, Keep Your Left Hand Free. And the left arm is Bucky's.
Bucky's arm.
There's another reference in the first episode of Winter Soldier. It's that small stuff that it might seem minor, and it's like, why? But you have to wonder, why is this here? So I thought that scene was captured pretty well by like, okay, this guy's got a serious role and he's taking it on. And this is all prior to Aquaman, the film, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
so he hasn't really accepted his responsibilities as protector of the oceans. But now that we've seen Aquaman, now that we've seen Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 84, there's small things that come from those that make this much more complete, including Wonder Woman being able to fly, which hadn't been explored yet except for 84.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I will say that as much as I love Ben Affleck as Batman, heavy emphasis on love. I will admit that he does look a little funny in the suit at times. However, I will say that this particular version of Batman is taking a lot more cues from The Dark Knight Returns, who is like a much more like bulkier and older version of Batman. So I am willing to like forgive that aspect of it.
Yeah, I took his bulkiness in the suit a couple of ways. So like you said, Davis, it's more representative of him, like the Frank Miller version of Batman. Yeah. He's bigger, stockier, more muscular. But I also attributed some of that to the suit itself and his desire to be intimidating to combatants, right? So you don't want to be the same size as 10 other guys that you have to fight at the same time. But if your armor is bigger, you know what I mean? Like if you put muscle shading and you put like things in it to actually make you look more menacing, then that's going to up your intimidation factor. And that's how I took the design of that suit.
And I also appreciate the fact they took a minute to explain that Alfred upgraded Batman's armor from the last movie, where they used the Kryptonian technology on his arm blades, on his gauntlets, so he could protect himself from potential, lasers and this and that. They explained it again, where I give Zack Snyder credit is his attention to detail.
Yes.
If all this attention to detail was cut off from the previous, version. So I can appreciate that. And then one more thing I just want to point out about the Aquaman scene, we can kind of move on, is again, Pete, thanks for busting out the fact on the music. I know some people have been complaining. I liked it because it set a tone to this movie moving forward. Another thing I like, they took out that stupid line, I hear you can talk to fish. Thank you. I hated that line. That song, it was a little weird, but the way I took it was that Aquaman is like a meta-human, and he's like almost like a god to these people.
Yes.
That's why you see that horny blonde chick just like sweater, like, I know I'm being funny, but it's true.
Me too, ma'am.
Look at him like a god. He's the god of the ocean, and he brings them food. He protects them. So, again, that weird song, they probably just did that for him. Like, oh my God, here he is. Let's say
like a song of worship. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Really, and this is super minor detail, but they finally answered the question: what happens to that sweater? Is it just sit there until he comes back? Like, if he's going to keep showing up shirtless after swimming in, where's the sweater go? Now, when he's later on walking off that pier and the waves come up and grab him, whatever. But he's wearing this nice shirt to keep himself warm that you see him later in. It makes a little more sense instead of attention to detail that makes this just such a better film.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh yeah.
Keeping the tone of Aquaman, first and foremost, again, I love James Wan's film. He was given the task of making Aquaman, the goofy character, made him awesome, and he made $1 billion film. And I liked how they executed the Aquaman movie. But I have to take a minute and appreciate what Zack Snyder did with Aquaman and the Atlanteans. First and foremost, it's so gut-wrenching that they took out Willem Dafoe's Valko character, because Willem Dafoe never phones it in. So
he's great.
I appreciate the fact that in James Wan's version, the Atlanteans just speak underwater. In this version, they make gestures and noises. Like, I don't know if it's just like, it's like the language they speak underwater, or they just make noises and they mean certain things. But when they talk, they open up the bubble, and that's how they communicate. I also like their armor. Now, again, in James Wan's version of the film, they had this very colorful armor. And in this movie, it's like rusty, and like the color tone is, the gray tone and whatnot. But I like the fact that Zack Snyder, even though it's still consistent with the Aquaman origin story that we got in James Wan's film, but he approached it differently.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing with the armor, because I thought about that too, as far as like, well, why is this armor brighter than this armor? And one of the things I thought about was that in this version, the armor that he sort of puts on is his birthright. So that armor is hundreds, maybe thousands of years old, that was worn by a former king of Atlantis. It's not like brand new armor that was recently forged. So it would be paler, look a little rustier, look like it has some debris on it. And so that speaks again to the attention to detail. These are things that have been thought out, these are things that have been considered.
Oh yeah. My favorite movie of 2019 was The Lighthouse, and it was awesome seeing Willem Dafoe again. It's such a huge shame that he was cut out into the theatrical version, because he was great here. I mean, I love Willem Dafoe in this movie.
Yeah,
me too.
He never phones it in, and
he's truly a phenomenal actor.
Yeah, and I also like the fact they briefly reference, hey, you've been teaching me this, you've been teaching me that, and then he's like, well, Arthur, why are you back here? You keep coming back, and this and that. Like, again, at least they kept it consistent with the other film, and again, just like I said, Willem Dafoe, like I said, he never phones it in.
Oh yeah, and I feel like even if you haven't seen James Wan's Aquaman, you can still figure out like what's the deal with the Atlanteans, Volko, Arthur, Mera, all that stuff. In fact, I wasn't even thinking about James Wan's Aquaman movie while I was watching the Atlantean scenes. Like, I just went in, not completely fresh, because I have seen Aquaman, but I wasn't even thinking about that movie while watching it. And I really enjoyed, like, how the Atlanteans were established. Although I will say one of my complaints with James Wan's Aquaman film, as much as I like it, you do kind of get the sense that it wasn't sure if it wanted to follow up on the theatrical version of Justice League or Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah, and I think that sort of speaks to the schism inside of Warner Brothers. So, a lot of these films were guided by Zack Snyder, when he was still a part of the Warner Brothers machine. Particularly, we've talked about this before, like his involvement in the Wonder Woman films, and how Patty Jenkins really leaned on him to make sure that whatever story that she told, that it worked with whatever his vision was. And so after he kind of left the Justice League project, that sort of threw everything into two camps. Like you had everybody who was on Snyder's team, who was really backing for this film to come out. And then you had all the execs who were really trying to just consider a post-Snyder DCEU. And, how do we make all of these things make sense with Whedon's version of Justice League? And so that particular scene, and maybe there are a few other scenes where you see certain differences where that's really noticeable.
Right.
The one thing that I really liked about it, and I agree with everything you guys touched on, especially Willem Dafoe's character being there, was that scene where Arthur goes down to King Atlan and looks at his trident. He just keeps coming back. That's great foreshadowing, whether you've seen the Aquaman film or not, because that becomes a pivotal thing, because that becomes his trident. Willem Dafoe's character throws the other trident down, so when Aquaman finally does show up in the underground tunnels, when that was that, I don't remember if that was in the original, but that was so awesome to see him show up. And I'm like, he didn't get the no, he's got his mom's trident, and he's taking his role and at least getting involved with everybody. It reminds me of when he goes deep into the ocean in the Aquaman movie and becomes himself. I love the Aquaman film. There were very few things I would have changed. I have one of my favorite bad guys in Black Manta, so I'm thrilled.
Awesome.
I'm thrilled we'll see him for future ones to come. I don't want to skip to the very end, but I loved seeing the Hall of Justice, the preview of them stepping in there, and all I was thinking, because Jay and I were chatting, he's like, oh, you're gonna love the end, and I'm like, oh, don't tell me they actually show us like a completed one. Like, I remember the cartoon, so I'm like just waiting to see that, the Hall of Justice. They're like, oh yeah, that's right, this was in the original, because I don't think I ever made it that far in any rewatch to get to that part.
I think that's a good segue, Pete, because you just talked about the tunnel scene. Okay, I'm perfect segue, because I definitely want to chop that one up for sure. The tunnel, first and foremost, you were exactly right. Yes, the Aquaman doing the trident was in the original cut, but we never got all that explanation prior. In the theatrical version, he just basically shows up.
Just shows
he has
up.
that the brief encounter with Mara, and then he just shows up. But this, as you just said, there's a buildup. There's more explanation of his character. So when he finally shows up with the trident, it makes that moment that more special.
Yes.
That being said, the tunnel fight. Oh my God, man. My mind was blown about how much better that tunnel fight was. They got rid of a lot of those stupid moments there where he's like, I'm afraid of bugs and this and that. And then, of course, the infamous Barry falling on top of Diana.
I hated that.
Yeah. That was but the thing that blew my mind was the scene where like all the debris is falling and then the Flash is like zigzagging above them, catching the debris. Like, that was fucking awesome. Like, dude, like that was so amazing. And then again, Batman whooped some ass too. You know, it was great to see more of Ben Affleck's Batman just whooping ass. Instead of just shooting guns, he uses his combat, he uses his grappling hook, and it was cool to see like the quote-unquote non-superhero doing his thing. I'm going out of order here, but that score with the guitar, that dun, 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 like I freaking loved it when they got off the ship there and they played that guitar, and then Cyborg has this moment with Batman saying, all these years I didn't even, because he was from Gotham, he goes, I didn't know you actually existed, and this and that. Like, oh man, everything about the tunnel scene was just so much better in this film. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with almost everything that you said. I really loved like the scenes with the Flash there, you know what I mean? Because in Whedon's cut, he's visibly like afraid of like, okay, well, I've only ever pushed people and run away, and sort of like paints him as this sort of like this kind of wimp. Here, you get that fear, but you also get the sense that he's willing to overcome that fear, right? Like, you see him doing a lot more with his powers here, particularly that scene where the parademons like trying to shoot him. And it's like every time he shoots a laser, he's like in one spot, in another spot, in another spot. Yeah. That was like fantastic. That was like what I was waiting for like the whole time. You know what I mean? The stuff with Batman, I've touched on it in other episodes where I think that this version of Batman is the only live action version where he's making good use of like not only his gadgets, but pieces of his costume. Like he's using his cape, he's using his gauntlets, he's using part of his horns. Like he's doing a lot of things tactically with the suit that was built for him. And you really don't get that in a lot of other iterations. You didn't even really get that in the 2017 cut. So to see it here in that tunnel scene was fantastic. I disagree with you on the score. I feel like there were parts of that score that were problematic, particularly the scenes with Wonder Woman. Anytime she did anything, you had to hear that weird singing right before. And I love Wonder Woman's theme, like Tina Guo's like theme for her. That's one of my favorite cinematic themes. But the singing every single time, it got a little bit annoying to me. Like, and it bordered on ridiculous.
I get it. That seems to be the divisive top. Go ahead, guys. You guys already know my opinion.
Yeah, what do you guys think?
I honestly really like the score. Wonder Woman's theme in Zack Snyder's Justice League is probably my favorite motif in that movie. Yeah. I don't mean to get too off topic, but I really liked how this version really fleshes out its characters like even more, especially when it comes to the Flash. We already talked about how the theatrical version really played on, you know, this sissy pussy Flash.
Yeah.
And where in this one, like you said, Mark, there is that fear, but he is willing to overcome that fear. I actually remember hating how the Flash was portrayed in the theatrical version. This version won me over. And while we're on the topic of character arcs, Cyborg, man.
Yes.
They really did Ray Fisher dirty in the theatrical version. And honestly, Cyborg is perhaps my favorite character in this movie.
I agree.
Yeah.
He wasn't just there and to the sidelines. He actually had a purpose. He had motivation. He had actual character depth. Like, everything about his character was truly executed very well.
I agree. I
want to get to Cyborg, but before we get to Cyborg, Pete, since you work for NewYorkStateMusic.com, and we're talking about the score here, I mean, you touched upon the Aquaman song, but I really want to get your opinion on the score.
I thought the score felt appropriate at times. I do agree that there was some parts where it just didn't feel synced up, but I have to go back and rewatch to find those. But even as that last scene where they're standing on top of like a reactor or something, or whatever then they pan by. That felt like one of those monumental, like Avengers-esque, moments where the music is just crescendoing perfectly. It's well written for the moment. Like, it really gives you that strong feeling. And I love what they did with the Wonder Woman theme to give it that more metal vibe. Ever since the first movie came out, it was like, oh yeah, all right, this is up there. I know that theme. It's appropriate for now, and it's enough to get the old fans remembering, oh yeah, that's how that goes. So when that got worked in, it was like, yep, that's Wonder Woman's music. Let's go. Because I don't know, nobody else really has Superman has a theme song, but we don't really use that much. But in general, I thought the music that went along with everything, whether it was the score or the soundtrack, were pretty well aligned with the theme of the flow.
Yeah, I understand where Mark's coming from too, because like everybody I've talked to has got a different opinion, especially everyone zeroes in on the Wonder Woman and the thing.
Yeah,
I loved it. I feel like that music tonally works because in this version, Wonder Woman has no problem killing. Yeah. And I just feel like with that little gloomy operatic, singing that we hear, I just feel that it fits that vibe. That being said, I really want to get Davis, you touched on Cyborg. Before we get into Cyborg real quick, and Mark and I were talking off air, I find it disturbing that Cyborg's story was cut so much, and then of course, Iris West was completely cut from the movie. What's the common denominator there? They're black. I just find that really, really disturbing how much was cut off for whatever reason. And I'm just really, really happy that we see Iris West and Cyborg. Ultimately, if you think about it, the whole entire Cyborg origin, the whole entire Cyborg story was put in this movie. So guys, go ahead.
And adding to what you were saying just now, Jay, there are also other characters who are POC, especially the Asian character who worked at Star Labs, as well as like other Atlanteans and Amazonians who were also POC. Like, they were completely cut out in the theatrical version. And I'm sure it's common knowledge that, huge like blockbuster movies, they tend to make a lot of money in China. Star Wars, Transformers, Marvel movies, like many action-packed blockbusters make most of their money from China. And when you look at the marketing for these Hollywood productions, when they're promoted in China, any character who is a minority of sorts are either pushed to the sideline or just completely cut out. Like, look at the Chinese poster for Star Wars The Force Awakens, where Finn is just not even there at all. Right. Or one of the posters for the Black Panther, where they put the helmet on T'Challa, whereas in the actual poster, you see his face. So I feel like the removal of like a great chunk of characters in this version of Justice League for the theatrical version was essentially made to appeal to China, which pretty messed up, if you ask me.
Yeah, I feel that the Cyborg was just like spliced in to like say, okay, well, we've got, the 5 other guys are in here, but what are we gonna do with this Cyborg footage? And they just slipped in some scenes here and there. And I'm a fan of Justice League, but Cyborg's a character I don't know very much about, and I don't want to speak for others, but he seems like the character that very few people would know about, because we all know Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman got his own film, and The Flash is as a TV show, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Cyborg has nothing. So this time around, we got the full story, the issue between man versus machine, criticizing his father going so far as to say, I brought life to you twice. And then his father sacrifices himself so that everybody can find the last box. There was so much more. And you kind of, on like just a structural level, you want to know exactly what he can do. And it's not just I can read computers and stuff, which he did have in the first movie, but the way that his arms turn into whatever they turn into, all of that is new to the average viewer, because Cyborg's not a run-of-the-mill character like Batman or Superman. So we need that backstory. We want to hear more about him, and this gave so much more depth. And the final scene where they're breaking up the boxes and he's just dialed in there and trapped inside and just waiting for Flash, that felt more emotional now, because you spent all that time building up to it, and now you've got that, and he's trapped in there with his mom and dad and himself without the metal.
Yeah.
and then just waiting on Barry wherever he is. And that all came together so much better. Like he felt like a full sixth part of the team instead of just featuring Cyborg, which is just how it came off the last time.
Well
and going off topic a little, I grew up watching the Teen Titans cartoon that was on Cartoon Network, and I really liked Cyborg as a character. And I will say that recently Cyborg has appeared in Doom Patrol, and they do a great job with this character there. And I'm truly happy to see them do Cyborg justice, pun intended, in more recent DC media.
Yeah. I mean, in addition to all of the extrapolation that they did to Cyborg in the 2017 film, I think an even bigger tactical error was to remove all of these other characters who it's clear that Snyder had plans for, right? Like, for example, Ryan Choi, who was the Asian guy in the film, the assistant to Silas Stone.
Who becomes the Atom, right?
Right. In the comics, he's the Atom. So they actually set up in the film that he becomes the director of nanotechnology. That was a hint. So we're going to see more of him. You know, the Black Amazonian, the Themysciran soldier. It wasn't really said openly, but I believe 100% that that's Nubia. That's the second Wonder Woman. So there are other characters, all these important characters of color that were actually written into the original story that were excised for whatever reason. But now you don't have, now if they ever did have any plans for these characters going forward, you have very little backstory. But here, you know, Snyder provides like an interesting amount of foreshadowing to let you know, like, hey, this universe is about to expand. You're about to see these heroes blossom. These people are going to become additional members of the League later. That's why in that end scene where they're starting to like plan out the Hall of Justice, that's why Diana says with room for more, because she knows like, okay, these are potential heroes coming forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm going to add on to the Cyborg thing, man. You guys have all touched on it. But I will say, like, Joe Martin, who's Silas Stone, his father, this performance, to me, the way this performance spoke to me, first and foremost, again, the score. All that music you hear during the whole entire Cyborg story, my God, that's so brilliant. But the performance is so poetic. Zack Snyder found Ray Fisher. Ray Fisher was a Broadway actor in New York City. Zack found him. It was so poetic. It wasn't just like him being a superhero. This was him being a beloved son, a football player. And they touched on it. He was a hacker at college. Right. He wanted to help people, but like just the performance and the way Ray Fisher was telling his story, it was emotional. It was gut-wrenching. Seeing him win the football game and his dad's not there. And if you're really, really paying attention, when he gets in the car accident, which is accurate to the comic, by the way, he put his arm in front of his mother right before the crash happened. He was trying to save his mother. And then, of course, the scene where he's like looking through all those security cameras and he's following that waitress who was broke. Mm-hmm. And wow, the whole Cyborg story was amazing, man. I just... I can go on and on and on about it. I love it.
Right. And how do you strip that down knowing that, you know, his origin is all about the mother box technology? You know what I mean? Like, that killed me about Whedon's version, is that how do you not really touch on that? How do you only give a brief glimpse of that and not make that the focus of the story? You know, so yeah, I'm really glad that he got his due. I'd never really seen Ray Fisher act in anything else. Yeah. And I really thought that this was his moment. He really got a chance to shine here and he took that opportunity and ran with it. To me, he knocked it out of the park.
I wholeheartedly believe everything, you know, Ray Fisher has said prior to the movie coming out. What concerns me is moving forward. I mean, are we going to get more Cyborg? Is he going to be in the Flash movie? Is he going to find more work? He was right about Ray Fisher, or Josh Whedon, but then he's also upset about some of the execs and this and that. And of course, he's on his Twitter rant. Just worries me because, like, I want to see more of Cyborg and I really want to see more of Ray Fisher because, again, it was a poetic performance. It was beautiful. Like, just the emotions, the way he spoke, you know. Because I'm sorry, I'm with Davis here. Like, I'm so used to the Teen Titans, hey, it's Cyborg, let's get pizza, booyah! Right. Like, I'm used to that. Don't get me wrong, I love it. It's great. Yeah. Well, I've never seen this version. I mean, granted, like some of the New 52 films a little bit, but not like this.
Yeah.
I just want more.
Yeah, the only other time that I've really seen like a dark version of Cyborg where he's really struggling with this new person that he's become is in the latest season of Young Justice, the Outsiders season. They have a number of episodes that focus on Cyborg's origin and like what happens to him after the accident. Like, what is this thing? Like, how do I control it? Am I a freak? Like, and so he's like going through all that. And then they show a dark part of his personality. I think that this took pieces of that and sort of just expanded on it in a lot of interesting ways.
Keeping it in the realm of Cyborg, the Superman resurrection scene, there's some details there that was completely washed. Batman's demanding, hey, do it. And then at the very, very last minute, Cyborg gets the vision of the nightmare multiverse or the nightmare scenario. He's counting down. He's like 5, 4, 3, 2. And then right before he says 1, he does this and he makes this look on his face. And then you see a dead Wonder Woman being burned.
Yeah.
And then you see the Amazons crying. And then you see a dead Lois Lane and Superman crying. And then with Darkseid holding Superman's shoulder. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's incredible. that was from Cyborg's perception. So Cyborg and Batman are sharing the same vision. And then Cyborg tried to abort the mission because he knew that if we resurrect Superman, this is what's going to happen. No, okay, this is the thing that confused me a little bit. Was it Cyborg, was he trying to lift up the mother box from hitting the water? Because you see the mother box sink in, and then it starts going upward. Was that Cyborg trying to abort the mother box, or was that the Flash just
I took that as the Flash hitting the Speed Force and reversing time,
which it was a prelude to the end of the movie where he really rewinded time,
right?
Which is also a prelude to the upcoming Flash movie, if you think about it.
Good point.
It kind of explains why Cyborg pointed his gun at Superman when he didn't want to, because his controls in the mother box, his armor saw that vision and was trying to kill Superman because that future scenario is going to happen.
Well,
they explains it, right?
Well, that's one way to look at it. At the time that I watched it, I thought it was in reference to what Wonder Woman said, which was that the mother boxes are actually afraid of Superman. They only woke up after he died. And so since he's made of the mother box energy, when Superman started scanning him, his technology became aware of it and became afraid. And that's why his defense mechanisms went off.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe it was because, like you said, he got a glimpse of the future. That's just.
It could be that.
It could be both.
Yeah. While we're on the resurrection, this scene was probably like the closest to like that was kind of like unchanged until you get to Batman.
Right.
And I actually like the fact that he lasered Batman, not once, but twice.
Yeah.
And then Lois Lane came on her own instead of being the big gun. Like, she came on her own and then Superman snapped out of it. But that made more sense. That scene was, that was just badass and how that was executed. I like this version way more.
And incorporated the
gauntlets. The Kryptonian gauntlets.
It brought that full, if you're going to introduce something early on, at least bring it up later on. And it's not wasting a scene, not wasting a moment in the movie. So that was pretty cool to see. It was like, all right, we're going to get 1, we're going to get 2. And then when's Lois coming? There she is. And it was, so if you'd seen the first, you knew it was there. And then he snaps out of it.
Yeah. So. And I like that they set it up. Like, not like that they had to suddenly come up with this plot device for why Lois would be there. She's been coming there every day since he died. And I love that they set it up right in the beginning. Like, she just happened to already be there. You know what I mean? Like, or somewhere close. So that when that happened, oh, well, she's already right there. So it makes sense that she would just naturally run over. It just felt more natural, more organic. It was it's superior writing, I think.
Also, no more CGI Superman mouth.
Yes.
That's another thing.
How did we not address that first?
Do you bleed? And that's another thing. He does that stupid "do you bleed" line, which doesn't work a second time.
Right.
And then, of course, he throws Batman over there, and then Batman says that other stupid, "Oh, something's bleeding now," and
yeah.
Like, thank God.
He was like too slapstick in that version, I feel like.
Yeah.
No, but another thing about that scene, or the scenes that are adjacent to it, is that when Superman wakes up, he doesn't remember who he is. And in the Whedon cut, it's like as soon as he sees Lois, it's almost like he snaps back to himself. But in this, they show like scenes where he's just barely starting to remember, just pieces. Like, okay, well, I like it here. Like, I remember this place. Like little things, like he's on the farm, but he still doesn't know where he's at. He still doesn't know who he is. And again, that's more organic and more realistic, in my opinion, than to just suddenly see Lois and it's like, oh, okay, I'm Clark again.
Yeah, that felt fake in the last one. Like, oh, she has that much power over him. I thought that it took a little while for him to, appropriately so, for him to get back to business, because he goes back to the farm, and then I think the first scene that I saw was he's standing out in the field, and I was like, oh, he's like a scarecrow, probably because he's just a little bit scared from what he's doing, so he's just touching the corn plants. I was saying to my girlfriend, I watched it, like, do you think he like speed plants the corn, or does he just go one at a time to try and do it as a man? Side theory there, but he's there in the field, and Mom runs up, and then Lois runs over, and he's like, I'm here, all right, I got this now, but they brought me back for a reason, so I got to go check that out. And I think then he goes to Alfred, and then he goes to meet up with them, and it was well timed when he did show up too. I thought that was perfect in the final scenes, like you knew it was coming. Oh nope, there he is. So it was more of a build-up, because he's not in the movie for maybe an hour. He's either in this for 25% of the film, and in the last one he was there for much more. So the way they treated Superman was much better, especially because we have a really solid Superman, Henry Cavill.
Yeah, shout out to the black suit Superman.
Oh
yeah, that was cool.
They could have fleshed it out a little bit more, explaining the black suit, but at least they took a moment where he goes to space and just absorbs the sunlight.
Yeah, there was a real Jesus moment there, as he's just, arms out, and and for the allegory of Superman as Jesus, it's good to see it every once in a while. I've gone back and looked at Superman 1, 2, and 3 lately, and the illusions are in there. They're just as subtle, and you need to see it because it's perfect. And I didn't know that his middle name was Joseph, Clark Joseph Kent. And
I didn't know that either.
And Joseph is Jesus' dad, so it's just another little connection to that. I always found that pretty fascinating and part of the Superman mythology.
Yeah, another thing I appreciated too, I didn't really realize until someone on Twitter pointed it out, is that the shot of Superman in the cornfield lines up with the Richard Donner Superman in the cornfield, because he's wearing the red plaided shirt in the cornfield, and someone's like taking.
Saw that too.
Yeah, and they're like, hey, this lines up with Zack Snyder paid tribute to Christopher Reeve.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but that's an excellent point. Now I got to go back and watch that scene to really appreciate that.
I want to talk real quick. Martian Manhunter. I want to hear go around the circle. How did you guys react when we first saw Martian Manhunter?
I lost it when I saw Martian Manhunter. I was like, oh my God, he's actually in this.
So prior to this, you didn't know?
Well, I did know that Martian Manhunter was going to be in it, but like the way they built up to Martian Manhunter, I was not expecting that.
It was a nice inclusion, because I took him as like the next one that we're missing besides the Green Lanterns. When he shows up about halfway through the movie, I messaged Jade. I was like, yes, all right, he's here. But we're going to wait till the end. And then he shows up again and explains himself a little bit. So he's always been there. That feels like this is a little more thorough and in depth if they have this one character from another planet who's there, because DC's universe so far is very earthbound. All of them are from Earth. It's not like Marvel, where you've got a lot of people from outer space, even starting out early. This is the first intergalactic character, so interplanetary character. So I think that's going to be a pretty cool addition, and it allows, a little bit more room for more things to happen in space, because, you have, Darkseid's wherever he's located. and Green Lanterns will be factored in, hopefully. Yeah, Manhunter, glad to see him.
Yeah, I love that he appears. I hate that he was underutilized. And this could just be because I knew Snyder's intention with Swanwick as a character, that he was in fact Martian Manhunter. And so when he first appeared on the screen, I was like, okay, great. This plays into the whole slogan of Unite the Seven, right? Because even with Superman, there are only 6. So I was like, okay, well, Martian Manhunter's got to be the 7th one. So the whole rest of the movie, after he appears to Lois as Martha, I'm waiting for him to jump in. Like, he's going to drop in like any second. Like, when they're fighting Steppenwolf, he's going to appear somewhere. And then it turns out that we don't even get him until the end. It was like a huge disappointment to me. And then it just left me wondering, like, well, he knew that all this stuff was going on. He even talked to Bruce about this attack that was coming and stuff like that. Why did he not join in with them the whole time? What was he doing? And it really bothered me as far as like after the movie, like after I was thinking about it, like, well, why was he not more active in the film? Like to me, it would have added something. It would have like actually packed a bigger punch if even you give him 1 or 2 scenes where he's actually fighting these parademons or something like that. It would have been great.
The Martian Manhunter is a nice inclusion. Mm-hmm. They just don't really justify him being there enough.
Right.
Yeah. It is a little bit of an add-on. I do agree with you on that. He's not really justified in this. It's just very nice to see that they're not forgetting him.
Yeah.
And he was part of the reshoots too. Like, how Zack Snyder was given $70 million to not only touch up the movie, but to do reshots.
Right.
Martian Manhunter was one of the added additional scenes that wasn't in there to begin with.
Right.
I was fine with it. Mark and I talked about it. We went in depth a little bit off air, basically like, well, we kind of talked about, well, he's been there since Man of Steel. Why didn't he do anything? My thing is, like, I felt like he knew that, one, that Superman was going to be able to defeat Zod in Man of Steel, and he was just overseeing everything. And then Batman versus Superman, he knew that they were going to overcome Doomsday. He probably knew that Superman really wasn't, like, dead per se, because, I think he's got, like I said, psychic abilities and whatnot. I feel like he finally shows up because Darkseid, I'm sorry we haven't talked about Darkseid yet, but Darkseid was the ultimate threat. Darkseid is the threat to the multiverse, and I feel like maybe it was finally Darkseid that drove him out of his disguise, per se.
Right, right.
I already knew he was going to be there because Zack Snyder said a long time ago that Harry Lennox is Martian Manhunter, and he didn't reveal that, and this was before the Snyder Cut was even official.
Exactly.
So, but yeah,
like I said,
I'm okay with it. I'm glad he was included in there. Again, I understand why you'd want to see more of him, but that was the impression I got, that he was kind of waiting. It was Darkseid that brought him out of his disguise.
Yeah, and you may have something there because I kind of feel like, if you know about Martian Manhunter's origin, he's the last of his species, and he came to Earth to go into hiding, right? And so that makes sense that, like, okay, maybe he feels like he can't get involved. All right, this planet already has its champions. They will take care of it. Do I risk coming out of hiding? You know what I mean? And maybe the threat of Darkseid is enough to where he's like, okay, I need to at least warn them that this is coming, and if they need me, I'll be around or whatever like that. But still, just knowing that, I just think it would have been a slightly better movie if we'd have gotten some involvement with him.
Yeah. So do you guys want to talk about the ending with Jared Leto, or do you guys want to talk about the final battle first?
Man, both are great.
I feel like talking about the final battle would be a more fluid segue.
Okay. So whoever wants to go first.
I love Steppenwolf's redesign. They really made him a lot more menacing. They gave him more motivation, some actual depth. Like, I really enjoyed his character in this version, and I thought the final battle was just friggin' sweet. I had a big smile on my face the whole time. I was thinking, yes, this is the Justice League.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It looked like more of a team. It felt more like, it felt like first Avengers level teamwork, but on a, second Avengers kind of level. So I was pretty impressed to see them all come together the way they all work together in every capacity. It took a moment where it was like, oh my God, they failed, that they united. And then Barry comes in and I'm like, he's not going to rewind time. Yes, he does. The fact that he can do that and he does it so well and it fit in perfectly just as he's like, okay, we're going to do it. Yeah, it came together perfectly and wrapped up nicely, especially with Darkseid just turning around and walking out.
Yeah, because for a moment they failed. And then if you think about it, Flash was the ultimate hero. He reversed time just enough so he could send the spark and they could separate the boxes after they did unite the boxes. Like, it was freaking awesome. And of course, you know, seeing Superman just pound the shit out of Steppenwolf and then laser.
Oh, that was great.
Pounding, lasers off his goddamn horn.
Yeah.
Aquaman with this Mortal Kombat stab. And then finally, again, I love the Wonder Woman theme. And chops his goddamn head off right in front of Darkseid. Like, yes! And then Darkseid staring them down. Oh my God! Oh
yeah. I especially like what they did with Flash in that scene because it harkens back to earlier in the film where he talks about, well, there's this thing I can do. I don't like doing it because it can upset the balance of whatever. You know, and he's obviously talking about the Flashpoint. He's obviously talking about like going into the Speed Force and changing time. And you see him do it when the mother box hits the water and comes back up. And then you see it again here where he's failed, but he knows in order for them to win, he has to take everything back. And by doing that, I'm almost certain that that was a setup for the Flashpoint film where, okay, he's upset the natural balance of things. So now that you've changed the outcome, you've changed everybody's reality in some small way. And maybe you don't see that right away, but in the next Justice League film or maybe in the Flashpoint, you see these subtle changes.
Yeah, and it sets up more. It wasn't not only that they set up Flashpoint, they obviously set up Batman's solo film. Because now, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't the yacht scene, wasn't that Whedon's doing, not Snyder? Or was
in the original?
Snyder? Yeah.
The original version where he's like, oh, well, don't you think we need a league of our own? Yeah, like he changed that. The original scene is what we saw in this iteration. And that was to set up Affleck's version of Batman, which no one outside of a studio has actually read the script. But the synopsis that's been sort of out there for a while has been, it's all about Deathstroke learning his identity and using that against him to sort of have him question his own sanity, to sort of like mentally torment him. Yeah. And so that was very nicely handled, I thought.
Yeah, so I'm hoping, because the Batfleck solo series, that rumor won't die.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be put into overdrive. I'm saying it right now. I'm demanding it. Hand ban Affleck the keys. Let him direct. Let him write.
Let him do it.
Let him.
Yeah.
And he can be right on HBO Max. It doesn't have to be big budget. Just bring back J.K. Simmons, Jeremy Irons, Joe Manganiello, and Ben Affleck. Let them do that story of the solo Batman versus Deathstroke. I want it badly now. Now that we got the official setup for it, make it happen, please.
Yeah, please. To me, this is, and I know I might be in the minority here, but this is the best Batman we've ever gotten. And I think that understanding the synopsis and knowing what Affleck was originally going for, having it be sort of related to David Fincher's Fight Club and sort of having it be like, well, you know, sort of having Batman ask these questions. Are these villains real? Are these rogues real? Or are they just aspects of my own personality? I would love to see that play out.
Yeah.
You know, I would love to see a mini series where you see Batman in mental anguish, because that is the one person he can't defeat is himself, really. And if you pit him against himself, then you have the makings of a very compelling story, I think.
If that Batman story or plotline like comes into fruition, I'd be so happy to see it, honestly.
I feel like it's got the best chance of happening. If Justice League 2, I don't know if Justice League 2 will happen, but I think there is the slight possibility of the Ben Affleck solo HBO Max thing happening. I just feel like if we're going to get anything else after this, that's going to be the one that's going to happen. I feel.
I hope so.
I'd take a version of that on HBO Max. I kind of want to see where they go with Robert Pattinson's version and what else they can do with Batman on the big screen. But
Yeah.
I'll give Affleck one more shot, especially if this Deathstroke storyline is amping you guys up so much, and now I'm excited for it. 'Cause it's sometimes you
I
get
think we could do two Batmans. I'm fine with two Batmans.
We've got two Jokers, so
yeah. Speaking of Joker,
Yeah.
oh my God, this movie wouldn't be what it is without that additional nightmare scene. And Jared Leto knocked it out of the park. And Mark, do you remember when we talked about the little things? Do you remember what I said in that review?
Yeah.
I said, where was that performance in the little things in Joker and Suicide Squad? We got that here. I know it was brief, but talk about that dialogue. Fun fact, Ben Affleck and Jared Leto did not film that scene together due to quarantine. Wow. They filmed their shots separately. They used body doubles, and they made it work as one scene together.
Huh.
Brilliant. And just that whole entire dialogue where he calls Mara a flounder and a fish stick.
Yeah.
And then he taunts Batman saying, you need me. You know, Mara said, who did you lose? He lost a father, he lost a mother, and an adopted son. Oh my God. Jared Leto, he's redeemed himself. Yep. I'm all for seeing him play the role again. Guys, give me your thoughts on that brilliant scene.
Chills. Like, nothing but chills. I know people hate the whole aggressive killing Batman, and I totally get that. But I feel like in context, this take on Batman does make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Pardon my language, but when Batman says, when I kill you, and trust me, I will fucking kill you.
Yes.
I was like, oh God.
I don't think we've ever heard Batman use that language before. Like, I'm sure there's a Batman where he says shit or something like that, but never goes so far as an F-bomb. And that's where I was like, ooh, what future are we in? And the whole time, and this was my one gripe with the movie came at the end, because I was like, this isn't a dream sequence. What cool thing is this? It's a dream sequence. God damn it. But he says,
but so was the BVS.
Says,
that was a dream sequence too, and then the Flash appeared.
Yeah, but now it makes sense.
Yes.
After thinking about it, it made complete sense. The confrontation between Batman and Joker and the two of them having to work together and what it leads to, it could, there's a lot that you can do to bridge the gap in between those.
Totally.
I knew this for years because Kevin Smith leaked it on his podcast years ago. But even knowing what I knew, I was still blown away because of the execution. And again, I also like the fact that Batman said, I killed Harley Quinn and she begged me before she died. I was just like, oh my God, it just that dialogue just kept getting better and better. And then Superman appears, and then Jared Leto, true to Joker, he was laughing. Which, by the way, if you guys really want to know, what was originally written is Superman crushes Mara's head and he kills Deathstroke and Deadshot. It was Joker, Cyborg, Flash, and Batman that sent Flash back in time that we saw in BVS. But the fact that we got a glimpse of what was about to happen, God, I loved it. That was the best scene of the movie. It was necessary, and I'm glad they did it. I want to see that Nightmare Vision as a full movie. I'm a fan of dystopia. I love Planet of the Apes, Book of Eli, shit like that. But to see this world where Darkseid has won, Superman is basically the Injustice Superman. I want to see this.
That was kind of what I was going to bring up, is that they did a good job of sort of incorporating the anti-life equation storyline and the Injustice storyline, which is, by the way, is far and away my favorite comic book story arc. I think that Leto really brought it this time. I think that he was able to see his own performance and what worked and what didn't work in Suicide Squad, and then kind of take elements of other performances that he's done and sort of improve on that character and improve on his take and make it his own. Just like the rest of you, I really enjoyed that exchange between the two of them, because it revealed a lot, not just about Jared Leto, but about how far Batman has fallen. He's clearly lost everybody, and he has no code anymore. He's not. He's
threatening to kill Joker, and he's not a killer.
Right, yeah. and he's already admitted to killing Harley Quinn, which is likely something he wouldn't have done before. And so I really hope that, even if Snyder's not involved, if we get another great director, that they actually flesh that out and that they give us a sequel of some kind that involves that gives us a little bit more of that story.
So we'll kind of like wrap this up. Pete, go ahead, plug yourself in and what you do, and then give your overall rating and thoughts of the movie. And how would you rate this, like between 1 and 10?
Well, for a grade, I'll give it like an 8.5. I thought this was well done. You know, I don't even want to think about rating the first one, but it was well laid out. So it wasn't like a laborious, like we have to sit here for 4 hours. It was broken up. The story was accessible. You didn't need any backstory. And if you did, it was even better. And it left you hanging on to what happens in the future with Darkseid. And while Avengers fans and will see Darkseid and think Thanos, you know you'll see him later on in some capacity. So we're kind of like already anticipating what will come in the future here. And then you know there's another epic battle coming up with that guy. I did like that they were vague on it, about the anti-life equation, which, I'll be honest, I have no idea what that is. I've heard of it. I haven't looked into it. And I think there's a lot of people who'll be like, huh? And it's like alluding to some larger thing that can come into play. And what is this anti-life equation? And it's got to be something. It's something to carry on, and it's more than just, you know, stones. It's more than that. Like there's a whole thing involved. There's math now, so people can, as far as I know, it's math. I'm not sure what this is, and that's the cool thing is like we can go in dark and be like, all right. So there's this. I thought overall it was great. You know, I look forward to dissecting it and going over certain parts of it again and again, especially the last two. This was, you know, a pretty strong performance, and again, you know, the actors and the fans kind of came together to say there's more and there's a better version, and maybe in the future they'll let us have theatrical 3-hour plus versions, or HBO Max becomes this much more of a streaming service to present us with a full, hey, here's a 4-hour cut of Wonder Woman 1984. Guess what? It didn't suck. Well, I don't know if we have time for that. Suicide Squad, yes, yeah.
Yeah. Where can people find your work, and you know, anything you want to promote to our NerdCage Live audience? Oh,
for sure. So visit NewYorkStateMusic.com, whether you're from New York or anywhere else. We have a great amount of music in this state, a lot of rich music history from, you know, major bands to up-and-coming artists. Right now, we're wrapping up our March Madness series, where we had 64 up-and-coming bands from around the state. We're down to our final 4. Voting ends Tuesday, and then we have our finals. And we're going to be kicking off a new series, Made in New York, real soon. So if you have any connection to New York, any interest in New York, there's just an immense amount of music and music history that comes out of this state. So we're looking forward to bringing that to you. And music's coming back. So we got only a few months before we can start to get to normal. So yeah, just, you know, get excited, be patient, and visit NewYorkStateMusic.com.
Thank you for coming on, Pete. We absolutely cannot wait to have you on again to chop it up more. Where if we do a recorded show or a live show, we definitely very much look forward to having you back on real soon, man. And this was, I had an absolute field day chopping it up with you, man. Thank you for your unique perspective.
Thanks, Jay. Mark Davis, this has been great geeking out on this. I've been loving this. Looking forward to it.
As for my final thoughts on the Snyder Cut, I think it's truly astonishing that something like this was able to happen and exist, and that everyone can watch it at home if they have an HBO Max subscription. It's truly, truly wonderful. Huge improvement from the theatrical version. You do feel every single second of that 4-hour runtime, but it was necessary. It was totally necessary. Any more or less would have been a huge disservice to it. I thought the cinematography was outstanding. The characters are incredible. I love the scoring and the sound design. All around, it was just a great experience. My complaints with it are more nitpicks than anything. I'd honestly love to see more. And my name is Davis Badol, also known as Titangoji. I have a YouTube channel that's also called Titangoji. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I also have a TeePublic and Patreon if you wish to support me through there as well. So, Zack Snyder's Justice League. Check it out.
So I'll kind of like give my closing thoughts here on the Justice League. First and foremost, I give it a solid 9.5 out of 10. I think this was Zack Snyder's best movie. I feel like this was like the Watchmen, but with Batman, Superman, and all of them. That's what it felt like to me. Like it was an epic storytelling that's attention to detail. What keeps it from me from giving this a perfect rating, we got everybody's stories fleshed out. I kind of wish they incorporated Barry's origin of how he got his powers. Everybody did get their time to shine. And Flash's character was fleshed out more, his character, but we didn't see his origin. I feel like that was a missed opportunity. And then if you want to go there, some of the special effects, even though it's far better, there were a couple spotty shots here and there. I think maybe with more time and more money, they could have improved upon it. But I'm not going to blame anybody because I know Zack was given a small budget. He did it for free by himself in quarantine. So I'll give that a pass. But if there's anything that kept this movie from being perfect, Flash's origins and maybe some better special effects shots.
Right on. And I'll go ahead and give my final take here. Nitpicks aside, I think that this is a triumph not only for fans of Zack Snyder, everybody who was part of the Release the Snyder Cut campaign. It's also a triumph for all of us fans of nerd culture, of comic book culture, of comic book movies. This is going to do wonders to push the genre forward in ways that I don't think that we have anticipated under other circumstances. And so for that, I really have to give kudos to Zack and Deborah Snyder, to HBO Max, to the cast, to everybody who actually came back to actually make this second version of Justice League and to do justice to it, pun intended. But yeah, this is absolutely worth a watch. I would give it a solid 8. Definitely not a perfect score, but as I said before, this is a movie where if you are a fan of Snyder, you're going to love it. If you're not a fan, you'll probably still like it, but not love it. But either way, it's definitely worth your time to check out.
And before we go, Mark, I just want you, because like I said, you've worked in TV and you've been in films and this and that. And you always have your finger on the pulse of everything that's going on, and you always spit out the facts. So, Mark, before we go, I would just want to ask you this. The movie's out. They left some doors open. We already know the story of what's going to happen with Snyder's, working on other projects. But in your heart of hearts, Mark, what do you think is going to happen moving forward post-Snyder Cut and everything?
Well, I'm not like an expert analyst or, I'm not a person who can tell the future or anything like that. But as my hero, John Campea, always says, winning cures everything. So we know that here this weekend, this has been a tremendous hit already. And it's going to continue to do better and better and better as time goes on. People will watch it, rewatch it. It's a huge boom for HBO Max. And I don't see them not wanting more. And so even though Snyder has now moved on and he's developing a Netflix universe for the Army of the Dead, I think it's entirely possible that they reach back out to him and ask him to sort of come back and flesh out these stories more. It would serve greatly to us fans of these characters. Hopefully that turns out to be a reality for us.
I hope other studios are watching this. I hope this is going to be like a hard lesson learned. Like, let the director direct. Let him do his thing. Studios shouldn't interfere. Right. And, I think Justice League from 2017, it's a hard lesson learned. And now film schools are going to, compare the two movies. I think this is going to be, a topic in film school. I think this is going to be something that everyone's going to point to. Well, look what happens when you let the director direct and do his thing, and look what happens when a studio interferes. Whether we get more of this universe or not, I think moving forward, every studio, every director, they're all going to be looking at this look what we should do and look what we should not do. So, right. Davis, thank you very much. To Pete, thank you very much for coming in as well. This has been a lot more fun. Honestly, I feel like we could have done more.
Absolutely.
I feel like of all the topics we got through, I got through the ones I wanted to get into, and it was really, really fun chopping it up, man. And just whew, what a wild ride it's been. I mean, think about where we were back in 2017 and where we are now that it's out. We'll see what happens moving forward. Again, just want to reiterate, watch party on the 27th of March. Hope everyone can be there. So that being said, before we go, we ask you to please like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, spread it like Sophisto USA, from Albany to Dallas to Syracuse to Louisville, to all of our friends and fans around the world at NerdCage Live. Enjoy life, stay safe, and restore the Snyderverse.
Sayonara.
Take it easy, y'all.
Ooh, trying to get out of the NerdCage, are ya? Well, before you go, hit that subscribe button. And if you're really intrigued, ring that bell. Thank you for dropping by. Until next time, Tell everyone you know about NerdCage Live!